guten Morgen. Das ist jetzt sehr rasant gegangen. Aus meiner Sicht sind alle, die sich angemeldet haben, zu unserem heutigen Webinar auch eingetrudelt und haben sich online verbunden. Das heutige Webinar machen wir gemeinsam mit der Firma AppEnsure. Es geht vom Thema her um End-User Performance Monitoring und Produktivitätssteigerung in Citrix-Umgebungen. Und ich will Sie zu diesem Webinar sehr herzlich begrüßen. Ja, die Agenda wird so ausschauen, es gibt maximal 2-3 Minuten eine kurze Vorstellung der Firma, von mir eine Einleitung, warum wir dieses Thema so spannend finden, und dann übergebe ich an den CTO von AppEnsure, Sri Chaganty. Der wird sich ganz kurz vorstellen, die Firma ganz kurz vorstellen und uns dann in einer Live-Demo das Produkt zeigen und 1-2 Use Cases mit dem Produkt darstellen, und im Anschluss gibt es eine Q&A-Session, wo es dann wieder sicher Diskussionen geben wird, wie man das Produkt heißt, wie man das Produkt einsetzt, wie das Pricing ist, so diese typischen Fragen. Ja, mein Name ist Reinhard. Mich kennen, glaube ich, alle, die sich hier jetzt zum Webinar angemeldet haben, persönlich. Ich bin seit 30 Jahren in der Branche und seit 25 Jahren als Geschäftsführer der X-Tech und als Gründer der X-Tech unterwegs, und seit mehr als 20 Jahren beschäftige ich mich mit dem Thema Applikationsbereitstellung von Terminal-Servern, Citrix etc. Und in diesem Bereich haben wir über die Jahre gelernt, dass End-User Performance einer der wichtigen oder das wichtigste Qualitätskriterium für diese Lösungen ist, und dass diese End-User Performance gar nicht so leicht zu messen und zu beurteilen ist, wie wir uns das bis jetzt immer vorgestellt haben. Ganz kurz zur X-Tech. Wir haben 2 Standorte, wir sind mehr als 30 Mitarbeiter. Wir haben 750 aktive Kunden in Österreich. Es gibt uns, wie gesagt, seit 25 Jahren. Unsere Hauptinteressensgebiete oder der Fokus der Firma liegt auf Unified Endpoint Management, wo auch End-User Performance Management dazugehört, in dem Bereich Security, in dem Bereich Infrastructure für Applikationsbereitstellung und natürlich Access für Apps und Data, dieses klassische Citrix, Sharefile, Mobile-Thema. Ja, um was geht es beim End-User Performance Monitoring oder beim End-User Performance Management? Es geht darum, dass wir feststellen wollen und auch festhalten wollen und auch erkennen wollen, wie die Performance einer bestimmten Applikation beim Endbenutzer ist, die tatsächliche Performance. Und jedes Mal, wenn wir so typische HelpDesk-Tickets uns ansehen, dann sehen wir, dass der User sagt, mein Citrix geht langsam, meine Applikation geht langsam, und dann beginnt in der IT das klassische Fingerpointing zwischen den einzelnen Gruppen. Die da sind Netzwerk, die da sind Storage, die da sind Virtualisierung, die da sind Citrix Delivery, die da sind Applikation. Und jeder misst mit seinem Monitoring und mit seinen Tools Werte und Performance, und prinzipiell sagen immer alle, in meinem Bereich alles grün, es muss der Nachbar sein, es muss der andere sein, es muss die andere Abteilung sein. Und genau gegen diese Fingerpointings innerhalb der IT-Abteilungen versuchen wir vorzugehen und eine Lösung zu bieten und zu zeigen, wo denn wirklich der Schuh drückt in diesem Gesamtkonstrukt. Was noch schlimmer ist, wenn die ganze Geschichte in der Cafeteria zwischen den Mitarbeitern ausdiskutiert wird. Wenn einer dem anderen erzählt, was er denn gestern erlebt hat, und vorgestern hat er von einem gehört, bei dem hat es auch nicht funktioniert, und es gibt keine vernünftigen Tickets, es gibt keine vernünftigen Messdaten, es gibt keine vernünftigen Anhaltspunkte, über was die Leute denn da eigentlich diskutieren, außer mein Citrix ist langsam. Und was mir hier dann als Consultant immer wieder passiert ist, dass ich zu Kunden gerufen werde und wir in eigentlich so einer Situation stehen. alle sitzen schon irgendwo in einem Forum, es ist alles brav aufgezeichnet, alle sitzen oder stehen in diesem Fall herum und sind ziemlich ratlos, wie sie denn diesen typischen mein Citrix ist langsam oder meine Applikation funktioniert nicht etc. begegnen können, was für Maßnahmen gesetzt werden können, was wir denn jetzt tun. Und meistens ist es Stochern im Nebel oder ganz Blindflug im Nebel, aber so sieht es dann typischerweise aus. Ja, und an dieser Stelle würde ich dann auch schon ganz gerne an den Sri Chaganty übergeben, der uns jetzt dann erzählen kann, was denn die Lösung ist, die AppEnsure in diesem Bereich bieten kann und wie man mit AppEnsure in diesem Bereich mehr Klarheit und mehr Sicht reinbringt in die Dinge und wie man das besser machen kann. So, Sri, it's yours.
Okay, good morning everybody, and thanks Reinhard for that introduction, and thank you for XTech for having this webinar, and for every one of you who've taken the time to attend this webinar, thank you very much. I'm Sri Chaganty. I'm the CTO and founder of AppEnsure. AppEnsure is all about end user-centric application performance management, and especially today with the subject matter of Citrix and how do you resolve issues when you're delivering applications through Citrix. I will be presenting few slides giving you some background on the solution and what we do, how we do it, and how we are different before going into and giving you demo on one or two use cases based on the time we have. With that, a quick introduction to AppEnsure. We were founded in 2012. We are headquartered in Silicon Valley, and we are a Citrix-funded company as well as venture capital-backed company. The AppEnsure product is a result of more than 15 years of consulting practice that I had with my firm that basically started in the networking world, and having successfully implemented about more than 6 million ports out there in the world that are running our networking software. As things started moving in enterprises for virtualization and delivery virtualization and resource virtualization, we were asked to come in, because network is always the culprit, to prove that it was not our fault. So based on that practice of showing that it is not the network or our software that was problem, we gained the experience and developed the expertise on trying to find out the end-to-end visibility of any application delivery and trying to find out what's wrong with the delivery mechanism. And that result and that experience basically resulted in developing the AppEnsure product. We are about 60 employees, predominantly in research and development, about 50 engineers based both in the United States as well as in India. That's the brief introduction about AppEnsure. And before I go ahead and talk about AppEnsure features, differentiators, and how we will help our customers alleviate the problems and resolve the issues with their performance of applications, however they're delivered. The fundamentals on which we built this product is very important, because as I mentioned to you earlier on, this is coming from years of experience of having worked with almost every tool out there that is in the monitoring space, and having found that there are drawbacks and there are issues with many of the solutions out there. So the first and foremost fundamental on which we build the product is, we've seen that many of the monitoring tools out there today are collecting commodity data. When you're collecting commodity data, whether it be through PowerShell scripts or WMI or SNMP or any other means, the results you're going to be getting are commodity results. So the commodity data, unless it is verified and correlated by a unique measurement that the solution brings to the picture, then unless it is not done, then what you're going to be having is commodity results. And that is the reason why many of you, even today, after implementing Citrix or other delivery mechanisms or other ways of delivering your application supply chain to the end users, are still having issues and are still looking at perfecting your performance of your applications, and are listening to this webinar because you still have those problems. Secondly, it is wrongly interpreted by many of the monitoring tools out there today that application performance can be deduced by looking at how much CPU is being used, how much memory is being used, how much I/O disk space is being used. We took a completely different approach, saying that resource utilization is not reflecting how an application is performing. Resource utilization is just a symptom. And if you've architected your application service delivery chain in a perfect manner, your resource utilizations could be 90%, but still you will be delivering the service levels that you promised to the end users. Therefore, application performance as interpreted by some of the solutions out there today based on purely resource utilization is not the right solution, and that is one of the fundamentals on which we built our product. And there are some tools out there if you're developing your own applications in-house and not using vendor provided packages like SAP or others. There are tools out there that help you to perfect the code that is being written inside your organization. Again, historically, the concept of industry, or how the vendors have educated people, is that if you perfect your code, then the perfect code is going to make sure that it is going to be operationally perfect, which is not true. A perfect code is a necessary condition, but not enough to guarantee that that perfected code that you've developed is going to operate well when you put it in production. So the interactions of the application or components of the application with the infrastructure and how the infrastructure is providing services to those components is also a big factor in understanding how an application is performing. And we've seen, as I told you, in our experience of having used almost every tool out there in order to prove that it is not our fault when we were in consulting business, we've seen that many tools out there throw tons of data on the screen. Their definition of visibility is bring all of this commodity data that they can get from whatever sources that are available through the kernels or network elements or WMIs of the world, and bring it and paint it on the screen and make sure that you have lots of data to look at. In our definition, visibility is not throwing a lot of data on the screen. Visibility is the correlated intelligence of the data that is collected and correlated with a unique metric that we measure, and then provide the data that is enough for you to show you how an application is behaving, how a user is behaving, how an end user is experiencing that application, and if there are problems, how can you get to the root cause of it so that you can solve the problem in less time than it would normally take. Finally, of course, if you are a development house and you have code perfection tools, the performance of an application service delivery chain is a joint responsibility of both development teams and the operations teams. And the tools that are employed, or the toolbox that you employ, will not be solved by one single solution out there today. You probably might require one or two different solutions to give a complete 360-degree view of what is happening with your application delivery in terms of the service levels, as well as how the capacity is being used in that delivery chain. I'll take a pause here, and I apologize, I can't speak German, so I'm basically going at my pace in English. So I'll take a break and I'll ask Reinhard to interject and see if anybody has any questions. Reinhard?
Yeah, no, there are no questions. Gibt es zu den Folien vom Sri bis jetzt Fragen? Dann bitte über das Chat-Tool oder das Fragentool im Werkzeug stellen. Okay. Sri, there are no questions. Go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you. And if I'm going too fast, I'm going too slow, or
I
my
will tell you.
accent is not, please let me know. You can type in a question and Reinhard will be my policeman. So, what are the AppEnsure differentiators? Let me go in and start listing them out. First of all, we support any application, any delivery mechanism, anywhere, all the time. Whether you have applications, Java applications, .NET applications, or you have legacy applications that were written in Visual Basic or C or C++, we don't really care. Any application that is communicating and is having transactions is something that we can monitor, including middleware schedulers that might be asynchronously waking up and having transactions based on a batch process. We monitor every processing application that takes in or transactions or generate transactions. Any delivery mechanism, and any delivery mechanism in terms of if you're using Citrix, we are going to be focusing on Citrix today, or you're using standard methods, like if you have standard applications like Outlook or SAP or any other vendor provided applications that are working with either thick or thin clients, we monitor irrespective of the kind of application, how it is being delivered. However, your application delivery supply chain is architected. You might have components of an application in one data center, another component in other data centers. You could be using SaaS services as part of your application service delivery chain, like, for example, Salesforce or something else that you might be using that is part of your application infrastructure. We monitor those, and what we monitor is the real transaction all the time. Every real transaction from every user is monitored. There's no sampling and there are no synthetic transactions involved. In the process, as we are monitoring this, we are going to be auto-discovering the applications, auto-discovering the application topology, and then we will be calculating the response time of every application for every user end-to-end and hop by hop. Also, we measure the throughput for every application for every user end-to-end and hop by hop. So if you're delivering VDIs using Citrix, then we can provide you the responsiveness of the VDI, not just from how Citrix is reporting it, but based on the real responsiveness of that VDI that is being delivered, whether it is a shared desktop or a dedicated desktop. And while measuring this, we build contextual intelligence based on the hour of the day, day of the week, week of the month, month of the year, on how an application is responding to the users. And we develop a baseline, and the baseline basically tells you or helps you understand what is normal, because most of the times, most of our customers don't know what normal is. When we ask them, do you know what the service levels that you're providing for your application ABC? Do you know how many users are using it? Do you know what kind of response time that these users get at 8 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at the morning, around noon and before they go home? Nobody has answers for that. The normalcy in any IT operations is nobody is calling me, nobody is complaining, nobody is yelling at me, therefore things should be okay. That is the definition of normal today. And we refuse to take that definition as normal. Normal is when you are delivering the desired service level. And if you're normal, if you don't know your normal, establish your normal and determine whether that normal is optimal or not, or fine-tune your infrastructure and delivery mechanism so that that normal will become optimal. And most importantly, today when you look at it, when a trouble ticket is generated, and if you have silos of expertise, whether they're server system administrator, server expertise, storage expertise, Citrix expertise, VMware expertise, whatever might be, these silos where you have the subject matter experts, when a trouble ticket is generated, it is normally takes, and I have in my own personal experience have seen trouble tickets that were languishing in the operations for more than a month, because everything, as Reinhard was pointing out earlier on, is finger pointing from one silo to another silo to another silo, and the entire performance management is built around the fundamental that I should prove it is not my fault. And we at AppEnsure totally refuse that. The ability to find out what is wrong, where is it wrong, so that I can bring it to the operational state quickly is the purpose for any customer to be implementing a performance management tool. And AppEnsure differentiates itself in providing a fast track path to that particular issue silo where an issue has to be resolved. And that is possible only because we have this end-to-end visibility that is auto-discovered, and we are measuring and correlating the entire chain based on the response time and throughput, which are the unique metrics that we are collecting, that we are correlating with the commodity data to find out what might be happening with the problem. And then if you some of the things practically that we have seen is that most of the tools out there look at applications as atomic applications. In our experience, we've seen atomic applications, a group of them will provide business service, and having a metric to measure the SLAs that are being provided by business services is important, and that is a very unique feature of AppEnsure, which probably I will not have time to demonstrate today because of the time restraints. Any questions?
No questions so far.
Okay. So I'll go to the solution basics before we get into the demo. Fundamentally, we are an agent-based solution. Agents reside in the servers, that is mandatory. They reside inside the master image if you are delivering VDIs. And you can also put these agents on the endpoints where the applications are being accessed. The agents are universal agents. Let me explain what universal. They are based on the operating system. You do not require an agent for Java application, another agent for .NET application, another agent for Ruby on Rails, another agent for C or C++. The agents reside in the kernel and run as a service, and therefore they're universal in terms of the operating system, and they're also universal in terms of self-discovering where they've been installed, whether they're installed on the servers, whether they're installed on the VDI, or they're installed on the endpoints, and automatically discover themselves the mode they may have to be operating in. Agents do not require any resources. There is no disk space required. There is no hard requirements in terms of being able to store data on the servers. The agents are basically self-policing. They're constantly monitoring themselves to make sure that they're not consuming the resources on the servers so that they will obstruct the delivery of the applications itself. Typically, they take anywhere between 1 to 2% of the resources, and they have a self-policing mechanism where if the agent thinks that it is going to be putting more than 5% of resource utilization, then the agents will throttle back and will reduce the frequency of collecting data and sending the data, and thereby going into a safe mode so that they will not be the reason why your applications will go into or your servers will go into a blue screen mode. The agents run as a set of high available services within the OS. There are 3 services that are basically triangulating among themselves to make sure that the agent service is always available, up and running. When you install the agents, there is no server restart required. You do not have to restart your servers. The agents will come up as a service and will start looking at the transactions and will start functioning. And when you install the agents, there is no special configuration required at all. The application discovery, application topology, all of this is done automatically. There is no configuration required from the end user's point of view. All these agents communicate with the master appliance, and this master appliance is where the brains of the product is, where the correlation is done. And for security reasons, the master appliance will never communicate with the agents directly. It is only upward communication from agents to the master all the time. We use a NoSQL database inside this master appliance, which is MongoDB, with its vertical and horizontal sharding, allows us to scale up to hundreds and thousands of agents in the field. And finally, reiterating a point I made earlier on, what we are monitoring is real traffic, not synthetic transactions. The real traffic based on the context, as I mentioned, the time, and measuring the real traffic, real time, real responsiveness of an application for every individual user of that application or that VDI. Any questions before I move on?
Questions?
So moving forward, when we talk about AppEnsure is about end user centric APM. What we found out when we were using other solutions is everybody talks about how well their server farm is, how well their resources are, how well everything is up and running, or whether it is up and running or not. But nobody cares to look at how an end user is actually experiencing that application. And that is the reason why when we talk about end user specific or end user centric APM, we are emphasizing the ability for us to be able to monitor every user that is coming in, irrespective of how that application is being delivered. So for example, if you have a backend infrastructure that has been, here in my example, I've taken all off-the-shelf products out there. So if you've instrumented the backend, irrespective of how it is being delivered, we'll get there. It could be Citrix, it could be HTTP access, it could be thick client, thin client, whatever might be the case, whatever the delivery mechanism is. When you instrument the backend, we are measuring the response time for every call that is coming from every user to every application. Every time a user calls, how long did the server take to respond back to that particular request? When you install the agent on the end devices, then we measure the response time from that end device. How long did it take when I sent a request for an application, for that application to respond back? So this bifocal view basically tells you if there is an issue with the backend, if there is an issue with the delivery mechanism, or is it an issue with the end device itself? Is the customer watching 3 YouTube simultaneously and calling you and complaining that they cannot load their Outlook Express? You should be able to find this when you instrument it end-to-end and understand completely how an end user is experiencing any application that you're delivering based on the response times and the throughputs, because those are the only unique measurements at the end of the day that will make him pick a call, or him or her pick up a telephone and call you and say, my application is slow. What do you mean it is slow? Well, it is not as fast as yesterday. So what is that one thing that user is responding to? The responsiveness, the response time of the application. And that unique metric is what AppEnsure measures and correlates that with the rest of the commodity data to give you the real end user experience of the applications that you're delivering. Pausing for questions, and I don't see question thing lit up. Quickly, 2 more slides before I jump into the demo. and that is, well, what is the amount of data sent to the master per agent? Good question. Typically in a 24 hours time frame, this is a very important question because there is not tons of data that is being collected and shipped out so that your network is being taxed. In a 24-hour period, an agent will send anywhere between 5 to 8 meg of data depending upon the number of users and number of applications that you're delivering. 24 hours, 5 to 8 meg. So if you're a Citrix customers and if you're looking at NetScaler and you're turning on your app flow and the app flow is crashing and the edge site is crashing, the reason is because tons and tons of data based on S-flow and IP flow are being shipped over for every from every NetScaler, which is burdening the network as well as burdening the correlation. So when we developed the AppEnsure agent, we were very cognizant of the fact that least amount of data should go in real time, because what you're looking at, what is happening is real time, real user experience. That was a nice question. Thank you, whoever asked it. So when you are publishing applications, now if you have the Citrix delivery layer, you've instrumented the backend, you've also instrumented the delivery layer, and you're basically publishing applications to the end users, then we auto-correlate every user of every application to the backend, and the response time from the backend for every application access, and the latency through the delivery layer. So what we are trying to do here is basically not confine ourselves to delivery and saying this is not a problem of Citrix. If it is not a problem of Citrix and if there is a slow responsiveness, somebody has to be responsible for that, and that's what we provide when you look at the backend and what is being delivered from the backend. Not just pointing out it is a backend's problem. What exactly the backend is the problem is the granularity of the solution that you get. And if you were to put in that endpoint an agent as well, then you're looking both the endpoint agent identifies the network latencies or endpoint issues when you're accessing published applications. Taking that similar approach, if you were to go with the VDIs that you're publishing and again, instrumenting the backend infrastructure, instrumenting the delivery layer, and if the VDI, as I mentioned earlier on, will have an agent inside that image. Now, what we're measuring is for every VDI, whether it is a shared desktop or a dedicated desktop, the responsive of that VDI from that virtual machine where it is being launched and being delivered to either a single or a multiple users at a given point of time. And how, if it is a shared desktop, how the behavior of one user of that shared desktop is going to be affecting others and what needs to be done, and being able to correlate it and show it. And the response time and latencies through the delivery layer and the backend. Now, besides having an agent inside the VDI, if you were to put an agent inside that endpoint, then you get a three-dimensional view. A view from the delivery side, including the backend infrastructure, delivery from within the image and the applications that are being accessed, and the behavior of the endpoint itself when it is running that receiver and using that VDI as to what else might be happening within that endpoint that might be affecting the experience of the end user in terms of how the applications or set of applications or the image is reacting to their requests. So quickly, this is basically helps you to determine very quickly, as I pointed out earlier on, to be able to come to the operational state where exactly is the issue so that the appropriate subject matter experts can address the issues and resolve them. Before going to the demo, a quick summary of how it is priced. It is subscription model. Server agents are $50 a month or $600 a year. Endpoints, if you're putting agents on the end devices, they're $5 a month or $60 a year. If you're using VDA, it is per user, $5 a month or $60 a year. And we also allow bursting, because we've seen many of our customers have issues and they might have subscribed for X number of agents, but they've also paid for a bursting so that they could have periodically for a short period of time ability to burst more agents into the problem servers or problem areas to find out what is happening. Sometimes the endpoints geographically, they might want to have monitor them depending upon where the users are coming around the world. The master appliance, where the entire correlation and the brains of the product reside, it comes free of charge. There is no charge for the master, and there are no additional licensing costs. The database, everything is included as part of the subscription model. The subscription model will provide you with the maintenance and support included, and of course the prices that I quoted there are retail prices. Volume and subscription length discounts are also available based on the deployment scale. So I'll take one last question. Some of you might have had experience with some products out there. I'm bringing up an example here to show how we complement some technologies out there that have been there for the Citrix world for a while and have done a great job. Just like I was mentioning earlier on, code perfection is required. We are not doing code perfection, and if you're building your own code, then perfecting your code using some of the tools like Dynatrace or App Dynamics or New Relic is important. We are not doing what they're doing, and they're not doing what we're doing. And our focus is on our operations side, and so just took an example of one of the players out there that does an excellent job of providing you a complete real estate Windows estate, a clear picture of your Windows estate, how the applications are profiled, and looking at the resources and capacity planning and how the licenses are being used and all of that stuff, and how the users are, whether the users are being audited or not. All of that stuff that Lakeside software provides you is something that is complementary to what we're providing in terms of real-time experience monitoring for every application, for every user, and in the process building the contextual operational intelligence of your application real estate so that you can fine-tune it and provide better end-user experience. So as I mentioned earlier on, one solution alone will not solve all your problems in terms of monitoring. With the 35 plus years of experience in monitoring space, my conclusion and my recommendation to all my customers is you got to have one or two products that are basically, besides whatever comes from the vendor, to be able to triangulate to see how your entire application infrastructure is performing and how you can perfect it better and how you can get more out of it by having satisfied end users that are using your infrastructure. So before I go into the demo, those of you who are interested, we welcome you to go to our website and register. There is a free 14-day trial that you could sign up for, and we also provide a paid POC if you want to experiment and play with the product for longer duration than 14 days. I strongly encourage, and we have very strong partners in X-Tech who have been working with us and on the technology and for the last couple of years, and as a matter of fact even helped us in perfecting some of the areas related to Citrix and building a product, being true partners in building the product, and their expertise also will come in hand for you guys if you want to move ahead and evaluate AppEnsure. With that, before I go into the demo, I'll take a pause and I'll let Reinhard kind of iterate and summarize what I said before I get into the demo.
Okay, nachdem das keine Fragen gibt, würde das noch mal ganz kurz zusammenfassen. Also was wir gehört haben ist, es geht um End-User Performance, es geht immer um die Messung der Transaktion für die einzelne Applikation, für den einzelnen User zu einem gewissen Zeitpunkt. Das ist vielleicht noch was man herausstreichen kann. Wir sehen das in verschiedensten Projekten, dass am Montag in der Früh die Performance eine andere, die gemessene Performance eine andere ist als wie am Freitag mittags oder wie sie am Ende des Monats ist oder wie sie am Ende des Geschäftsjahres ist, je nach Belastung des Systems und nach Arbeitsweise des Kunden, Abrechnungen, Ende des Monats Abrechnung, Jahresabrechnungen etc. Und man muss zu jeder Zeit die richtige Antwort auf die Frage haben, ist meine Performance zu dem Zeitpunkt noch gut genug oder ist sie schon schlecht oder muss ich eingreifen? Und daher muss man auch alle diese Daten auswerten, aufheben und in Relation stellen, weil wenn irgendwas 5 Millisekunden am Montag dauert und am Freitag 10 Millisekunden, ist es immer noch super schnell. Wenn es am Ende des Monats 15 Millisekunden dauert, ist es immer noch super schnell. Wenn es aber am Ende des nächsten Monats plötzlich 70 Millisekunden dauert, kann es sein, dass es sehr schlecht ist. Und dann muss man reagieren, weil man dann sieht, im Vergleich zum letzten Freitag oder im Vergleich zum letzten Freitag des letzten Monats ist diese Performance unterschiedlich. Und das werden wir uns jetzt gemeinsam mit dem Sri anschauen. Wir haben eine Frage. Sri, possibly you can answer this question. Is the product certified for SAP?
Yes. Any application, anywhere, all the time. We have customers using our product monitoring their SAP deployments.
Okay, and the next question is, what about transactions to NetApp filers? That's typically CIFS and NFS.
So if the way the agent works is basically it is looking at the transactions that are coming into me and the transactions that are going out of me. So the agent will not reside on the NetApp NFS filer, but the last leg before that transactions are made, you have a server from where the transactions are going out. When you put an agent in there, that will monitor the transactions going and calculate the response time as to how long it is taking for the NFS filer to respond back. And I'll show that as an example when you don't have an agent on the last leg, still how we can monitor the calls going out to that last leg and the responsiveness of that last leg.
Okay, Sri, let's go ahead.
Okay, I'm logging into this master appliance that I was talking to you earlier on. This is basically a setup that we have in our labs in India, and let me explain this screen quickly and then I'll focus on Citrix delivered. The boxes that you're looking up there tell you that there are 4 applications that were auto-discovered and 6 users that were using those 4 applications. There are 4 applications that are being published using Citrix, XenApp or Zen Desktop, and there is a 1 shared desktop with 4 users that is being published again using Citrix Zen Desktop. There are no dedicated desktops. There are 14 altogether servers in the lab that were agented, and there are 2 endpoints in the lab that were agented. And this is the summary of what when you log in the first screen. So when I click on, just before we get into the Citrix delivered, when I click on the applications, the point I wanted to make here is that everything is application centric. So if you happen to have standard applications or applications that are being delivered using the standard HTTP methods of accessing, then those applications are auto-discovered, and if you have multiple instances of those applications, they're also discovered. So if I have 2 Microsoft Exchange servers, then I'll discover both of them, the number of users that are using it. The service level basically represents the percentage of the calls that came in the last 24 hours that were responded back without being slow or without having any errors. Gives you a summary of how well your applications are behaving in a nutshell if you're looking at all the standard applications. When you go to Citrix delivered application, the Citrix delivered, you can deliver applications, you can deliver shared desktops, you can deliver dedicated desktops. So again, when I'm looking at the application, here we have Excel, Outlook, PowerShell, and the Kaisis browser that are being delivered using Citrix, and a popular Outlook. Let us look at how Outlook is being published by Citrix-Kenner and how it is being used and the users that are using, because we see a user count of 4 and what is happening with the Outlook. So when I click on that particular application, what you're looking at is the host on which this application is running. If there are any other applications that are also being published on this host, the list of them, and you can navigate to any of them from here. The service level of the XenApp server, that 93% basically tells me that the pixels are being painted well by the Citrix for this application. This is the Citrix server's service level. The resource usage of the entire CPU and what this Outlook is taking, and the same thing with the memory utilization, how many concurrent sessions are there, how many users are coming in, and what is that they're exercising on in terms of CPU and memory on this particular XenApp where this application is being delivered from, and what are all the other applications that are running on this XenApp server and what is that they're consuming. Now, when I look at the, let's take, because our idea is to look at an end user experience. So as we've seen earlier in the summary screen, when I showed you, Outlook had some issues, because there in the summary screen, as you can see, there were 7 critical alarms out there. So before going there, let me walk you through as to how this will help you to find out. So let's pick the users. The users basically will tell you every user that is using the applications that are being, or the images that are being delivered by Citrix infrastructure. So I chose Juan, and I'm looking that he is basically using 2 applications here, and no desktops or shared desktops are being accessed by this particular user. So and he's coming from this particular end user device, and this endpoint, since it has a link connected to it, basically tells me that there is an agent running inside that endpoint, and I can navigate to that endpoint to see what actually is happening. I'll not go there. My use case here is I want to find out what is happening with Outlook and if Juan is getting affected. So as you can see here, application, this is how much Outlook is using, the CPU and memory, and how much Juan is using on that particular XenApp, accessing this Outlook application that is being published there. So user is Juan, application is Outlook I'm looking at, and this is what Citrix is reporting to me as the user session latency. And you can see that Citrix is basically telling me that user session latency is less than 2 milliseconds most of the times. However, the interesting part is the backend response time. The Outlook is now calling the Microsoft Exchange server behind it, and when it calls the Microsoft Exchange server behind it, basically how long is the Microsoft Exchange server taking to respond to Juan's request. And as you can see, there are instances here really bad when I took the 24-hour window, going all the way up to almost 115 seconds to sometimes to 11 seconds to 5 seconds. So you can see as to how the backend is not responding properly. For anybody who is in the Citrix world, if this happens, you will get a call saying that my Citrix is not working properly. Citrix is working okay here. It is the backend response time, it is the backend that is basically having issues, which means that the Microsoft Exchange server that we've seen earlier on is the issue that is basically might be having a problem. So if I look at, for this particular user, if I look at the topology of that user, you basically can see that all of this I'm showing you here is completely auto-discovered. There is nothing here that has been configured. So when I look at this particular VDI and I actually see what applications running it and what is he using in the backend, of course the Outlook is going and calling the Microsoft Exchange server in the back, and that is where, if you can look at this particular link here and click on it, you can start seeing that the response times is pretty high, and in terms of almost 74 seconds, which is almost touching the TCP/IP retransmission. So definitely there is a problem with the backend infrastructure. So let's go to the applications and look at the Microsoft Exchange Server, and of course it is 96%. There are issues here. Let's click on that Microsoft Exchange Server and look at what might be happening. And as you can see, the responsiveness of Microsoft Exchange Server in the last 24 hours has been hovering around less than 4 seconds, which is okay, but around this period of time you actually can see that it has shot up, and you have response times going way beyond into 110 seconds, way beyond the baseline. And you can also see there were a lot of critical errors that have happened there. So when I click on the alarms, because that's basically what we're interested in knowing as to what might have happened, and in the very same time frames that we were looking where there were issues, you have 2 critical alarms. One has happened 7 times, and when I click on it, it is basically saying that the LDAP service that the Exchange is using is taking a lot of time during this time period, and this sluggishness is the reason why the end user is having a problem with the experience that they're having using Outlook. When I talk about trying to find the root cause and trying to get to the point so that we can return it back to the operational state, here is where the monitoring of the dependencies of that particular application, which are auto-discovered by AppEnsure, is very important. LDAP service is a critical part of our setup there. We're using LDAP service, and there is the request to the Active Directory for whatever reason are taking longer time, and as a result my Exchange servers is having problems servicing the request that it is getting from the Outlook that is being published from Citrix Xenap servers. So the ability, this is the end-to-end visibility when we talk about not just showing you who is playing, but how are they playing is most important. Not most of the tools, when they talk about end-to-end visibility, they're presenting to you what is there. That is only part of the problem. What is there and how is it acting is very important for you to be able to reduce drastically the mean time it takes for identifying an issue with any of your applications that you're delivering. I know that we're going to be running short on time, so I'll do a very quick there are many features of the product, and of course you're all welcome to request for a demo on our website as well, and we can give you individual demo of the product and go through a typical demo, which normally takes about 45 minutes for me to cover most of the features, but I just wanted to concentrate on one use case of how an end user getting affected because of something going wrong with the backend is important, and how AppEnsure helps you to do that. And I also want to quickly show a similar use case with a shared desktop. So when there is one shared desktop in the catalog that are being published, we have one machine that is being published, and when I click on it, I see some alarms here. When I click on that, I basically will, I'm looking at that particular shared desktop and how the memory is being used, and how the CPU is being used, and how the disk IOs are being used, and how many users are using it, and whether they're active or not, and if there are any alarms. Of course, all of the alarms that we're talking about here, everything, we have all the standard practices of JSON insertions, REST APIs, so that they can populate SNMP tabs. All of that standard features that are required for any management tool are all built into the product. Here, the reason why I quickly went into this is a particular shared desktop is deviating in its response time, and there are 3 users that we have seen that are using it, and the response time deviation is happening because this is going beyond 100%. 3 times it has happened. When I click on it, I basically will see that on that particular shared desktop, one user called Chris is actually using majority of the CPU, almost taking the CPU to 80% because of the applications that he's using inside that shared desktop, which is basically affecting the other users of that same shared desktop, which is resulting in that particular machine having a response time deviation and a poor performance for all other users but Chris. So when we talk about correlating the information, measuring the response time, bringing it back, looking at the commodity data, correlating it, and seeing how the behavior of one user or a group of users is going to be affecting the larger population. Therefore, you could better perform or better fine-tune your infrastructure. If Chris is going to be running jobs that are going to be taking that percentage, then probably he should be given a dedicated desktop rather than being part of a shared desktop. So these are the things that AppEnsure will help you resolve in perfecting your application delivery so that you'll have end users that are consistently getting the service levels that you would wish to have in your organization. So with that, in interest of time, I'm going to stop my demo and will wait for questions to come in. And Reinhard, looking at you for directing me further.
Yeah, one question came in, and it's the sizing of the master.
Okay. Can you?
Yeah, it's one master appliance. It's about 4 CPUs. It's about how many CPUs, how many memory related to agents.
So typically we recommend 4 GB RAM, 4 cores, and 500 GB hard disk as a standard, and it basically depends upon the number of agents that a master can support depends upon the number of users and number of applications that you're going to be supporting. Typically a master can go anywhere up to between 500 to 1,000 agents, but we also support master of master and a collector concept. So you basically can have collectors, and these collectors can then help you navigate through master of masters to any of the populated environments to see how your applications are performing.
Okay, thanks. Do we have some success stories we can talk about?
Now, as long as I'm not forced to give names of the customers, of course. We are predominantly in banking infrastructure. Citrix, again, AppEnsure can support any kind of delivery mechanism, any application. But we have gotten a lot of traction and attention in the Citrix world, especially when the momentum to move from the older architecture to the FMA architecture with the almost greenfield or installations of 7.x of XenApps and desktop, and ability to have the visibility into the entire supply chain. We have customers in banking, we have customers in insurance, we have customers in pharmacy, we have customers in retail, and typically we have customers that have less than 100 agents to installations where we are instrumenting tens and thousands of agents in their environments.
Cool, sounds great. Gibt's aus dem Auditorium noch irgendwelche Fragen? Okay, nein, nichts Schriftliches. Dann will ich mich recht herzlich bedanken. Thank you to you, Sri.
Oh, thank you everybody for taking the time. I hope this was educational, and we definitely look forward to being able to get in touch with you guys to give a longer demonstration and an interactive session.
Es gibt eine Aufzeichnung von dem Webinar, die wird dann auf unserem YouTube-Kanal zur Verfügung gestellt. Wir stehen natürlich alle für Fragen und Demos und POCs bereit. Auch das Thema mit dem Pricing, Sri hat das ganz kurz gezeigt, kann man dann auch noch mit jedem individuell besprechen. Danke und einen schönen Tag.
Thank you. Bye-bye.